how can we collaborate to stop online hate crime? Number one would be to educate ourselves. It is essential to educate ourselves about what online hate crime is, how it affects individuals and communities, and how to recognize and report it. It is very obvious that online hate crime exists, and with the increase of social media platforms, we will continue to see a rise in online hate crime. When we understand and we're able to identify what this is, it will make our lives a lot easier in stopping it. Number two, report hate speech. If we have a zero tolerance policy, we should report any hate speech or hate crimes we witness online to the appropriate authorities or platforms. Reporting can help stop the spread of hate speech and hold perpetrators accountable. Number three, spread positivity. As corny as that may sound to some, we can use social media and other online platforms to spread positivity and kindness. This can help to counteract the negative effects of hate speech and promote understanding and acceptance. Number four, foster dialogue. Engage in a constructive conversation with others who have different opinions. By creating a safe space for dialogue, we can better understand each other's perspectives and work together and work towards reducing hate rhetoric. And number five, supporting victims. We should offer support to victims of online hate crime, whether it is by reporting the abuse or offering emotional support. It is important to let victims know that they are not alone and that they are people who care. Number six, advocate for change. We can advocate for change in our communities and in society as a whole. We can call on policymakers and tech companies to take action to address online hate crime and ensure that their platforms are safe from everyone. We've already seen certain social media platforms already addressing these situations. However, like I said back at number four, we still want to be able to foster that dialogue. We still want to be able to have conversations. We're going to meet people that might not like a certain religion, a certain race, a certain ethnic group. However, if we just kind of chalk it up to their hate speech or online hate crime, we'll never get anywhere. We want to still be able to sit down, have conversations as to maybe why they hate them, maybe explain that, some understandings that can be corrected.
Given the increasing number of hate crimes being reported in Canada, the Committee on Justice and Human Rights at the Canadian Parliament studied this important issue and participate in these dynamic discussions on how to better mitigate the incitement of hatred through online platforms to inform the Government of Canada and ultimately assist it in taking action to stem the spread of online hate and the enticement of hatred through racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, or any form of bigotry based on all prohibited grounds of discrimination. Some of the committee recommendations: funding for training on online hate, that Justice Canada develop materials and best practices on collecting data and combating online hate to be distributed to law enforcement agencies across Canada, that the Government of Canada implement the recommendations regarding the tracking of online hate, that the Government of Canada establish requirements for online platforms and internet service providers with regards to how they monitor and address incidents of hate speech and the need to remove all posts that would constitute online hatred in a timely manner.
Where we can find resources that could help us educate ourselves about the hate crime.
Well, I know in terms of hate crimes, you can go on most police services, and we usually have a section on londonpoliceservices.ca, or we actually have other police agencies around Ontario and Canada all have sections on their websites discussing hate crimes and if it meets the threshold. So you can always educate yourself by just going to those websites.
What if I saw a hate crime, but it was not towards me, my religion, my race, my sexual orientation, and it was going towards somebody else? What should I do in that case?
You can also give the police a call. Not everything that you report is automatically reported as a hate crime. It's up to our hate crime unit and our hate crime officers to determine whether or not it's a hate incident or a hate crime. A hate incident would just be recorded and documented, and it would not result in any charges, whereas a hate crime may result in charges.
So there is a big estimated authority for the hate crime unit to identify the hate crime and the hate incidents. So can you give us an example about each one of them based on your experience?
Yeah. So a hate crime, let me start off with a hate incident. A hate incident would be, for example, if I'm walking down the street and someone calls me a racial slur. That, although maybe not correct, and obviously I would be offended, that is not a hate crime. That's a hate incident. So that person would not be charged for any event, especially if it's a stranger on stranger. Therefore, that would be a hate incident. If that person walked by me, called me a racial slur, and punched me, the punch in conjunction with the racial slur would then become a hate crime. However, going back to a hate incident, if I'm walking down the street every single day and I pass the same individual who repeatedly calls me a racial slur, that may meet the threshold of criminal harassment because this person is repeatedly calling me the N-word or a racial slur, and now we might meet the threshold of a hate crime.
So is the having that behavior repeated is an element to identify this crime? Because we are getting angry all the time, and sometimes, some words fly out of our mouths, which is totally wrong. But
Yes.
would that be identified as a hate crime or hate speech?
If it's not repeatedly targeting an individual every day or meets the threshold of criminal harassment, no. A random person may in fact be able to call someone a racial slur or make opinions on that person's identity, pretty much, and it would not be a hate crime.
Based on your estimated authority, how much it need to be repeated in order to consider it under this?
So that would have to, it all depends. I can't say right now, but that would be investigated by an officer and determined at that time.
Case by case basis.
Exactly.
I see. So when the unit are totally sure that this actions are identified as a hate crime, what is the next step for you?
So if we form reasonable grounds to believe that that is a criminal offense, then that person would most likely be charged, and there would be conditions not to communicate with that individual afterwards.